Read Across America Day is March 2nd. Making Book Magic. Tracy West is the author of the Dragon Masters books. The books are fantasy. They have magic characters, places, and events. Scholastic News asked Tracy questions about her magical books. Please write your first name, last name, and date at the bottom of your Scholastic News. Inside Tracy's Magical World. As you read, think about the steps Tracy takes to write a book. Scholastic News. What are the Dragon Masters books about? Tracy West. Dragon Masters takes place in a fantasy version of Earth where dragons are real and magic is real. If you are 8 years old and get chosen by the magical Dragonstone, you can become a Dragon Master. You get paired up with a dragon. The Dragon Masters team up and go on adventures. Scholastic News. How do you write your books? Tracy West. I take 3 major steps every time I write a book. I work with my editor, Katie Carella, at each step along the way. Working with an editor is like working with your teacher. Your teacher might say, "Oh, I like your story, but it needs a stronger ending." A book editor does the same thing. The first thing we work on is the idea. I come up with the idea and send it to Katie to make sure she likes it. Next, I do an outline. I plan out what's going to happen in every chapter. I make sure I have a strong beginning, a strong middle, and a strong end. In Dragon Masters, each chapter ends in a cliffhanger. That's when the action pauses. You don't know what's going to happen next. You have to read the next chapter. Last, I write the book. I start at chapter 1 and I follow the outline until I get to the last chapter. Scholastic News. Do you revise your work? Tracy West. For every book, I do maybe 4 to 6 revisions. Sometimes I'll read a sentence and think, this could be more exciting. Why are they just moving here? Couldn't they be running or zipping or zooming or something like that? Scholastic News. Where do you work? I work on my computer in a special room in my house. I have a view of mountains and trees on one side of me, and I have a view of 100 chickens in front of me. We keep chickens, and they roam free on our land. It's a quiet and peaceful space, except for the roosters and the dogs. Tracy's Treasures. What does Tracy see when she works? One-of-a-kind worm plushie. Worm is one of the main characters in the Dragon Masters books. Fairy and Gnome Collection. Tracy collects magical creatures. Fan mail station. Readers send Tracy letters about how much they love her books. How can you tell if you're reading fantasy? There are certain things you'll find in most fantasy stories. Read about 4 of them. Find it in a fantasy story. 1. Characters have magical powers. They may use a wand to cast magic spells. 2. The story is often set during the Middle Ages. That was a very long time ago. You'll find a lot of castles. 3. The world has magical creatures like unicorns, elves, pixies, and dragons. 4. The hero of the story goes on a journey. That's a long trip or adventure. So think about those 4 things as you answer the next 4 questions. 1. Why do characters in fantasy stories use wands? Is it to brush hair, to stir soup, or to cast spells? Look back to find out why characters use wands. To brush hair, to stir soup, to cast spells. 2. What is a journey? Is it a long trip, a magical creature, or a castle? What is a journey? Look back to find what a journey is. A long trip, magical creature, or a castle? Question 3. Which of these would you probably not find in the Middle Ages? A castle, a king, or a spaceship? Which would you not find in the Middle Ages? Look back for the Middle Ages. Which would you not find? A castle, a king, or a spaceship? 4. Read these titles. Which do you think would be a fantasy story? So think about these 4 criteria. Would the true story of George Washington be a fantasy story? Wilma Wizard and Her Pet Dragon? Does that sound like a fantasy story? How to Make a Paper Airplane? Does that sound like a fantasy story? Think about the 4 things and which one of these titles would be a fantasy story. True Story of George Washington, Wilma Wizard and Her Pet Dragon, or How to Make a Paper Airplane. Don't forget to have your first name, last name, and date before you hand it into your finished work bin.
I think fantasy has the wonderful ability to take you out of your everyday life and bring you somewhere new and exciting and special. And that's like being able to go on a trip without having to get on a plane or a train or a rocket ship. Fantasy allows you to go anywhere without leaving your chair.
Making Book Magic with Tracy West.
Hi, I'm Tracy West, and I write the Dragon Masters series for Scholastic Publishers.
What is the Dragon Masters series about?
So the Dragon Masters is a fantasy chapter book series, and it's about kids who are 8 years old who get chosen by a magical dragon stone. And when you get chosen, you connect with the dragon and learn all about that dragon's special powers. And then the Dragon Masters team up, and they go on adventures and solve problems, and they save their lands from all kinds of villains.
Who are the main characters in the books?
So the very first Dragon Masters book is about Drake, who is chosen by the magical dragon stone to be a dragon master, and he gets whisked away from his home to the king's castle. He's very surprised because he didn't even know that dragons were real. And he meets 3 of the dragon masters who you will find in just about all of the stories in the series. Anna, who is the dragon master who are a sun dragon, and Rory, who has a very powerful fire dragon, and Bo, who has a very peaceful water dragon.
What makes the Dragon Masters series so fun to read?
There's always a lot of adventure and a lot of action. I work really hard to put a lot of action in the story so that the story moves quickly and there's always something surprising happening. And the end of each chapter also ends in a cliffhanger, which means that it ends in the middle of the action, so you don't know what's going to happen next. For example, in the very first chapter of Dragon Masters, Drake has been brought to the castle, and he doesn't know why he's there. And one of the king's soldiers sends him way down into the castle dungeon, and when Drake opens the door, a fire-breathing dragon's head pops out and shoots flames at him. And then the chapter ends. That's a cliffhanger because you don't know what happens after that.
What do you love about writing fantasy books?
One of the reasons I like to write fantasy books is because every day that I sit down and write is a different experience. When you write fantasy, you're really exercising your imagination in a way that you don't normally do. Every writer uses their imagination. When I write fantasy, I find just open my mind up to all sorts of possibilities and ideas, if I have personality stress. And finally, the very last thing I do is to give my dragon a name. And I do that at the end because once you know what kind it is and what powers it has and what it looks like, you have a better idea of what kind of dragon you're dealing with. And that's a good time to give your dragon a name. It was great talking with you all. Juan and I hope that you get a chance to read Dragon Masters and you enjoy your dragon adventure.
So, you need to tell me about your favorite book. So, you are going to answer these questions. It says you're going to interview a partner, but you're just going to answer the questions. What is the title of your favorite book? And titles start with uppercase letters, so make sure you write your favorite book here. Who is your favorite character in the book? So whatever you write here, you're then going to use to answer the next questions. Who is your favorite character in this book? Why do you like this book? I like this book because... Write your own question on this line. Make sure you use a question mark and then answer that question on this line. Can't wait to read about your favorite books.
Dance break! Let's dance like library books. Now, up and down. Now take a deep breath in. 1, 2,